This is bad. This is really bad.
Okay, so today I want to cover the absolutely crazy intelligence leak that occurred when multiple members of our government, including the Vice President, the Secretary of Defense, and a few others, were deciding to communicate about military operations using Signal. And if you don't know, Signal is like an app that allows you to securely send messages. The problem is like it's not approved for using like government things. If you're trying to send like secure messages and you work for the government at a high level, you have like your own way of doing that. You know, like you have skiffs, as I believe they're called. You have yeah, sensitive compartmented information facility where you can communicate secure messages without having to worry about people finding out what you said. But the idea that high level government employees are going to use Signal to communicate plans about how they're going to attack the enemy, now that is something else. This is really bad. And this is a screenshot of all the texts that were sent in this group chat. And the reason why we know this is because, yep, Jeffrey Goldberg. And so he was added to this group text in Signal by Michael Walls. And I'm going to read some of the conversation here. Michael Walls. Team, establishing a principals group of coordination on Houthis, particularly over the next 72 hours. My deputy Alex Wong is pulling together a tiger team, my deputy/agency chief of staff, following up from the meeting in the sit room this morning for action items, and will be sending out later that evening. Please provide for us your best POC. I'm getting this pick of chief. It's definitely not people of color. I mean, let's be honest about that. It's definitely not that from your team for us to coordinate over the next couple of days and over the weekend. Thanks. So now some people, they all, JD Vance and all those others, and Pete Tech stuff, give their picks. Michael Walls, team, you should have a statement of conclusions with tasking per president's guidance this morning in your high inboxes. State and Department of Defense, we developed suggested notification lists for regional allies and partners. Joint staff is sending this typo and a more specific sequence of events in the coming days. We will work with the Department of Defense to ensure Chief of Staff, Office of Vice President, and President are briefed. JD Vance, team, I am out for the day in an economic event in Michigan, but I think we're making a mistake. 3% of U.S. trade runs through the Suez. 40% of European trade does. There is a real risk that the public does not understand this or why it's necessary. The strongest reason to do this is, as POTUS said, to send a message, but I am not sure the president is aware how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now. There's a further risk that we will see moderate spikes in oil prices. I'm willing to support the consensus of the team and keep those concerns to myself, but there's a strong argument for delaying this for a month, doing the messaging work on why it matters, and seeing where the economy is, etc. So JD Vance is basically saying, so this whole situation is basically, the United States wants to conduct airstrikes against the Houthis in Yemen, right? And the Houthis are a rebel group in North Yemen who do have control of the capital and control over a good portion of the country, but they're not necessarily recognized as the official government of Yemen. And they've also engaged in attacks against merchant ships sailing through the Suez Canal, which is a very narrow piece of land. In fact, let me pull it up. Let me pull it up right here for you. Oops. Okay, here we go. So, the Suez Canal. Here, see, there's Suez. There's this narrow, very narrow canal that connects. I'll show you. Once we eventually get there, yep. Okay, so it connects the Persian Gulf and ultimately, the Indian and Pacific Oceans with the Mediterranean Sea and the Black Sea, and then further the Atlantic Ocean, right? So it's an extremely, it's an extremely important shipping line, and the Houthis have been launching missiles against ships that sail through there, right? So, as a reason of preserving the integrity of international shipping and the free travel and trade of goods, the United States has been conducting drone strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen, right? And this was true under Biden, and now it's true under Trump also. And honestly, I'm not opposed to these strikes. Like, I really think you cannot mess with international shipping. And the idea that the Houthis go after like random ships sailing through the Persian Gulf, and they land on the ships and like literally take hostages. These are not good people, right? I'm not gonna. I don't think the Houthis are good. I think they're quite bad. I think they deserve to get bombed. At least the militant Houthis deserve to get bombed. Yes. But what JD is saying here is that only 3% of U.S. trade runs through the Suez. 40% of European trade does. So what he's saying is, because JD Vance does not like Europe because they're democratic, and he doesn't want to help Europe out because 40% of European shipping goes through the Suez, but only 3% of U.S. shipping does. So he's kind of hesitant about conducting strikes in the Houthis because it doesn't really benefit the United States, directly at least, but it benefits Europe. So this is Joe Kent. There is nothing time-sensitive driving this timeline. We have the exact same options this month. The Israelis will likely take strikes, and therefore ask us for more support to replenish whatever they use against the Houthis, but that's a minor factor. I will send you the unclassified data we pulled on BAM shipping. So this guy is saying, Joe Kent is saying, if we don't do these strikes, the Israelis will, so it may as well be us. And then John Ratcliffe says, from CIA perspective, by the way, I believe he leads the CIA right now, John Ratcliffe, we are mobilizing assets to support now, but a delay would not negatively impact us. And additional time would be used to identify better starting points for coverage and Houthi leadership. And now here's Pete Hegseth. VP, so JD Vance, I understand your concerns, and I am fully support your rising with the president. Important considerations, most of which are tough to know how they play out: economy, Ukraine peace, Gaza, etc. I think messaging is going to be tough no matter what. Nobody knows who the Houthis are. Well, I think some people do. I mean, I don't know. Why would the Secretary of Defense say that? No one knows who the Houthis are? Okay. Which is why we would need to stay focused on why Biden failed and why Iran failed. Waiting a few weeks or a month does not fundamentally change the calculus. 2. Immediate risks of waiting. This leaks. Oh, yeah. This might leak. We will look indecisive. Israel takes an action first, or Gaza's ceasefire falls apart, and we don't get into the start this on our own terms. We can manage both. We are prepared to execute, and if I had final go or no-go vote, I believe we should. This is not about the Houthis. I see it as two things: restoring freedom of navigation, a core national interest, and 2, reestablishing deterrence, which Biden catered. But we can equally pause, and if we do, I will do all we can to enforce 100% of OPSEC. I'll welcome other thoughts. So, Okay, look, I don't like the Houthis. I don't like them targeting international shipping. Um, and I think it does make sense to bomb them, at least as long as the strike is proportional, as long as we can guarantee there's not going to be civilians being killed, and as long as we can say that yes, we are targeting Houthi commanders, Houthi stockpiles, Houthi supply lines, etc. So Houthi launch facilities, whatever. But so I'm not opposed to that. But I do have to say it here. When Pete Hegseth, by the way, the Secretary of Defense, the number 2 in charge of our military, said, I will do all we can to enforce 100% OPSEC, which is operational security. Well, you clearly didn't, because I'm literally reading your texts about war plans on Imgur, okay? Like, it's so laughable and it's so embarrassing. Michael Walls. The trade figures we have are 15% of global and 30% of container. It's difficult to break down that to US specific because much of the container either, going around the Red Sea still or around the Cape of Good Hope are components going to Europe that turns into manufactured goods, transatlantic trade for the United States. Whenever we pull the plug, or not today, European navies do not have the capability to defend themselves against sophisticated anti-ship cruise missiles and drones the Houthis are now using. So whether it's now or several weeks from now, the United States that reopens these shipping lanes, per the President's request, we are working with DoD and state to compile the costs associated with them and levy them on the Europeans. So what they're saying is there are some reasons why it's still in our interest to hit the Houthis, whether or not it's related to U.S. shipping, which is true, yeah. However, it kind of does go against a little bit of what J.D. Vance was saying up here. In this part, because he's kind of making the case of why sometimes things happen over there in a different country, but it still affects the United States. And I think that's kind of what he's trying to communicate to J.D. Vance. The trade figures we have are 15% of... Wait, I think I already read this, yeah. Okay, so Michael Wallace says, as we stated in the first PC, we have a fundamental decision of allowing the sea lanes to remain closed or reopen them now or later. We are the only ones capable of, unfortunately. And you know what? I absolutely do not like these people. But you know what? Yeah, I think of the Western countries, the U.S. is kind of the only one who can actually do what we're doing against the Houthis. I'm not really sure Europe has the navy or the ability to project force in a way that would stop the Houthis. So, but you know what? That's why I'm a proponent of European rearmament. Because Europe should not just stand weak, in support of democracy. Because the U.S. may not always be there. If the U.S. falls, Europe should be strong independently of us, all right? They need to have their own strong military to defend themselves. I don't want Europe to be the last bastion of democracy, but you know what? If they are, I want them to be strong. So Pete Hegseth, J.D. Vance says, at Pete Hegseth, if you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing out of Europe again. Yeah, I know. None of these guys like Europe. Let's just make sure our messaging is tight here. If there are things that we can do to upfront to minimize risk to Saudi oil facilities, we should do it. Yep. We gotta stick up for Saudi Arabia. Pete Hegseth talking to JD. I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic. Okay, yep, we get it. You guys do not like Europe. But Mike is correct. We're the only ones on this planet on our side of the ledger. By the ledger, he means Western countries. who can do this. Nobody else is even close. Question is timing. I feel like now is a good time as any, given POTUS has a directive to reopen shipping lanes. I think we should, but POTUS is still remaining 24 hours of decision space. As I heard it, the president was clear, green light, but we should soon make clear to Egypt and Europe that we expect in return. And we should also need to figure out how to enforce such a requirement. E.g., if Europe does not remunerate, then what? If the U.S. successfully restores freedom of navigation at cost, there needs to be some further economic gain extracted in return. And Pete Hegseth says agree. So I really don't agree with this. I think the U.S. should defend the Suez Canal and the Persian Gulf from Houthi attacks, but we shouldn't do it just because it happens to benefit the Europeans. We should do it because, for one, it's good for us, and then also it's good for the world. And it buys us a lot of soft power and goodwill around the world. And I think the current administration has forgotten that. We benefit by keeping other people safe. Do we understand that? We get favorable trade deals. Europe loves us, etc., etc. There's a lot of benefits to us by being the ones who keep the Straits safe. Yeah, Europe should help too, and we should put pressure on them. But just not like this. Just not by shit talking Europe. Alright. So Pete Hegseth says, and this is where it starts to get really real. Pay attention right here. If you were just, listening to what I have to say right now, go back to your screen and look at this right now. Pete Hegseth, team update. Time now, 11:44 Eastern. Weather is favorable. Just confirmed with CENTCOM. We are a go for mission launch. 12:15. F-18's launched. First strike package. 13:45. Trigger-based F-18's first strike window targets. Target terrorist is at his location, so should be on time. Also, strikes launched against MQ-9s. These are Reaper drones, by the way. The F-18 is a fighter jet. 14:10. More F-18s launched. Second strike package, so more fighter jets on their way. 4:15. Drone strikes against target. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop, depending on earlier trigger-based targets. So 15:36. F-18 second strike starts. Also, first sea-based Tomahawks launched. J.D. Vance, I'll say a prayer for victory. And then two people respond with prayer emojis. By the way, now Mike Waltz has set the disappeared message to be 4 weeks. Up here, sorry, it is a little bit long. Let me scroll. He said it to be 1 week, but now it's 4 weeks, I guess, because this is important stuff. I don't know. So Mike Wall says, VP, so JD Vance, building collapsed, had multiple positive ID, Carilla, the IC, amazing job, JD Vance. What? Michael Walls, typing too fast, the first target, the top missile god, we had a positive ID of him walking into his girlfriend's building, and now it's collapsed. JD Vance, excellent. Mar, good job Pete and your team. Michael Walls, the team in Mall, I don't know what that means, did a great job as well. Great work, all powerful start. Yeah, very powerful. Pete Hegseth, CENTCOM is/was on point. Great job all. Strikes ongoing for hours tonight. We will provide full initial report tomorrow, but on time, on target, and readouts good so far. Kudos to all, particularly those in theater and CENTCOM. Really regardless, prayer, biceps flex, America. By the way, TG, who is this? Is that Tulsi Gabbard? Could TG be Tulsi Gabbard? I don't know, just asking questions. And so you can see of the Houthi PC small group, you can see all these people here. Michael Wall, Scott B, Walker Bear, Brian, Pete Hegseth, Jacob, Dan Katz, Joe Kent, SM, Marr, Mike Needham, John Radcliffe, and Susie Wiles. So, I know that was long, but just understand this is how our elected leaders, our elected losers, yes, but also our elected leaders decided to communicate with each other on Signal on an app that's completely not appropriate to be used by elected officials for this type of work. Oh, and by the way, there was recently a report that said Pentagon warned staffers against using Signal before a White House chat leak. Uh-oh. So it looks like they got a warning that they shouldn't use Signal to communicate. The Pentagon recently warned its employees against using Signal, the encrypted messaging app, due to a technical vulnerability. An APR report reveals. That report comes one day after The Atlantic published a story detailing how top national security officials, including the U.S. Vice President and U.S. Defense Secretary, so J.D. Vance, and Pete Hegseth, had accidentally added a journalist to the Signal group chat, which reveals military plans for strikes in Yemen, which is just what I read. I'm reading you the full text of that. I'm telling you, I'm called Info Addict for a reason, right? I give you all the information. The Atlantic revelations sparked a widespread outage at a security labs and sent ripples of shock at the breach of diplomatic circles across the world. However, Trump administration officials have tried to downplay the sensitivity of information exposed to the journalist. But according to Pentagon OPSEC Special Bulletin, seen by NPR reporters and sent on March 18th, Russian hacking groups may exploit the vulnerability in Signal to spy on encrypted organizations, potentially revealing persons of interest. That's not good. If Russia is trying to hack Signal and some of the top officials in our country are using Signal to communicate, maybe that's not a good thing. Signal uses end-to-end encryption for its messaging and calls. It's also an open source application, meaning the app's code is open to an independent review for any vulnerabilities. The app is technically used as a secure method to communicate. The Pentagon-wide memo said third-party messaging apps like Signal are permitted to be used to share unclassified information, but they are not allowed to be used to send non-public, unclassified information. So non-public is the key thing here. Do we think talking about the weaponry involved here, how F-18s are going to launch, how MQ-9 Reaper drones are going to be launched, constitutes as non-public, unclassified information? I don't think so. In a statement to NPR, a spokesman for Signal said they were not aware of any vulnerabilities or supposed ones that we haven't addressed publicly. The Atlantic story, which was one of the editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, describes the Signal back and forth between senior Trump administration officials, led to widespread ridicule online, pointing to Trump's officials' lack of candor when discussing military strikes, and the original mistake in adding the journalist to the sensitive chat. Yep, it definitely was a mistake. Just a mistake. The chat included top-level officials within the Trump administration, including Vice President J.D. Vance and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and CIA Director John Radcliffe. So, yeah, you can see they were already warned in advance not to use Signal to message like this. Not to use this app to send your messages, but you know what? They did it anyway. Why? Because they're incompetent. So, in addition to all of this, as Trump aides were sending texts on Signal, flight data shows a member of the group was in Russia at the time. Wow, how about that? So, Steve Witkoff was in Moscow, where he met Vladimir Putin, and he was included in a group chat with more than a dozen other administration officials. And inadvertently, one journalist on Signal, a CBS News outlet, was an open source flight information, and the Russian media reporting was revealed. Witkoff arrived in Moscow shortly after noontime on the 13th, according to flight data, and then 12 hours later, Houthi small PC group chat on Signal, huh? Well, oops. Look up here. Houthi PC small group. Wow. To discuss an imminent military operation against the Houthis in Yemen, according to the Atlantic magazine editor Jeffrey Goldberg. That's the guy who was included on the group chat for some reason. So, I'm not going to read everything in this article because this video is already pretty long. But the main point in this article is that as they did this, they were warned. So as they did this, a member of someone in the group chat was inside Russia at the time period, and we know that the Pentagon warned staffers against using Signal for a White House chat leak. So the Pentagon literally already warned people not to use this app. Signal uses end-to-end encryption for its messaging and its calls. It's also an open source application, so it's open to everyone. And the Pentagon in a memo said third-party messaging apps like Signal are permitted to use to share unclassified information, but they are not likely to be used as a non-public unclassified information. So this is definitely not public information. And yet, while they were doing this, they shouldn't have used it at all, but while they were doing this, one of the people in the group call was in Moscow at the time. And I mean, look, as an American, I can't emphasize how bad this is, how incompetent this is, how embarrassing this is for all of us. While they were in Moscow, they did this. You understand, even if there's no vulnerabilities within Signal, what would happen if Russia had just happened to hack that guy's phone? Steve Witkoff, the guy who was in Moscow when this happened. What would happen if they had hacked his phone? It wouldn't even have mattered if Signal was super secure. If they hacked his phone, they could still see his screen on his phone when he opens it up, right? So he'll be scrolling through Signal, and they can see it in Moscow. And they can see all the classified messages. Don't connect to that. If he connected his phone to, Kremlin Wi-Fi, they may have been able to see it all. So not only are you using this stuff sending these types of secure government messages on Signal, you're doing this while you're in Russia. This is unbelievably bad. Anyway, let's continue. Okay, and now we have Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, the number 2 in charge of the military, attempting to defend his position on this issue. So let's just watch this video.
On full display in what's been done to the Houthi terrorists and what they're trying to do to close freedom of navigation. So you see, under the Biden administration, we let our troops and our ships and both warships and commercial ships get shot at to no consequence. What does that look like?
Well, I mean, Biden did launch strikes on the Houthis too, so it wasn't quite no consequence, but Biden did bomb them too, so it's not like this is unique to Trump.
Looks like weakness. And what President Trump has said is peace through strength is back. We will reestablish deterrence. That's not acceptable. And our ongoing campaign against the Houthis has been devastatingly effective. Now, as I said to this group a couple of times on this trip now, as we move to the Indo-Pacific to do our job, which is what we're here to do, nobody's texting war plans. Well, I noticed this morning, out came something that doesn't look like war plans. And as a matter of fact, they even changed the title to attack plans because they know it's not war plans. There's no units.
Okay, so what he's saying is, well, on a technicality, we're not at war with these. Congress hasn't officially declared war, so it's not actually war plans. It's only a battle plan, right? We only just revealed. By the way, do I need to pull that back up? Look at what we just saw. Pete Hegseth is talking about literally the weaponeering of the operation. He's talking about F-18s launch. And then at another point, strike drones launched, MQ-9 Reapers. He's talking about the exact weapons that were used and the times. But these weren't war plans, these were only battle plans. So no big deal, right?
No locations, no routes, no flight paths, no sources, no methods, no classified information. You know,
if it wasn't classified, it really should have been.
These war plans, I see them every single day. I looked at them this morning. I looked at attack plans this morning. You know who does attack plans and war plans? Men like that admiral right there, Paparo for the Indo-Pacific, or Eric Kurilla, our general in CENTCOM. They do attack plans.
Pete Hegseth is pointing out people behind him. Understand that these various military people behind him have their lives at greater risk directly because of his actions. All right, he, as a result of his actions, has the higher result of getting these people killed and many others.
And war plans. And thank God we have those leaders who do it and do it well, and our enemies know it. My job, as it said atop of that, everybody's seen it now, team update, is to provide updates in real time. General updates in real time, keep everybody informed.
Yeah, whatever. So now I want to go to a hearing that we had. So this was on March 25th. Ironically, there was already a Senate intelligence hearing scheduled on this day, but now since these signal leaks dropped, it provides us with an even better opportunity.
Classified phones, obviously reckless, obviously dangerous. Both the mishandling of classified information and the deliberate destruction of federal records are potential crimes that ought to be investigated immediately. And I want to make clear that I'm of the view that there ought to be resignation, starting with the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of Defense.
By the way, I like this Diet Coke that he has.
Director Radcliffe and Director Gabbard, have you participated in any other group chats with senior Trump administration officials?
Tulsi Gabbard was on this group chat. Let me just show you right here. I think yep, right here. TG, great work and effects. I wonder who TG is. Could it be Tulsi Gabbard? I mean, well...
in which classified information was shared using phones that weren't cleared for such information. Question for the two of you.
Senator, thank you for the question. I haven't, your question was, have I participated in any other group chats sharing classified information? To be clear, I haven't participated in any signal group messaging that relates to any classified information.
I haven't participated in any signal messaging related to classification.
At all.
Okay.
Follow up.
Director Gabbard?
Senator, I have the same answer. I have not participated in any Signal group chat or any other chat on another app that contained any classified information.
Director Patel, you weren't in this particular group chat, but have you participated in any chats on unclassified phones with other administration officials relating to national security? And if so, on what other topics?
Thank you for your question, Senator, and not that I can recall.
Did this conversation at some point include information on weapons packages, targets, or timing?
Not that I'm aware of.
Director Gabbard.
And MQ-9 Reaper drones.
Same question.
Same answer, and defer to the Department of Defense on that question.
Well, those are two different answers, but you're saying that was not part of the conversation?
That's my knowledge.
The precise operational issues were not part of this
Which apparently isn't much.
conversation.
Correct.
Okay.
Director Gabbard, I didn't intend to get into the Jeffrey Goldberg story, but something you said has sort of puzzled me. According to open source reporting at 11:44 on the morning of March 15th, Secretary Hegseth put into this group text a detailed operation plan, including targets, the weapons we were going to be using, attack sequences, and timing. And yet you've testified that nothing in that chain was classified. Wouldn't that be classified? What if that had been made public that morning before the attack took place?
Senator, I can attest to the fact that there were no classified or intelligence equities that were included in that chat group at any time. And I
so
defer.
the attack
sequence.
sequencing.
Say it too, but the literal weapons that you're going to use against them don't count as in classified information.
And timing and weapons and targets.
The time that it occurred is on the text too. Like you can see the time and you can see the delivery mechanism. F-18s and MQ-9 Reaper drones.
Don't consider should have been classified.
I
or
defer
were
to the
classified?
Secretary of Defense, the National Security Council on that question.
Well, you're the head of you're the head of the intelligence community. You're supposed to know about classifications. So your testimony very clearly today is that nothing was in that set of texts that were classified. I'll follow up on Senator Wyden's question. If that's the case, please release that whole text stream so that the public can have a view of what actually transpired on this discussion. It's hard for me to believe that targets and timing and weapons would not have been classified.
Did Jeff
So,
Goldberg?
the idea that the weapons being used aren't classified is just absurd, right? Like the idea that it's just okay to like have stuff like this. Weather confirmed variable F-18's launch, also strike launch MQ-9s. First drones on target when they was definitely dropped, and all these messages have times associated with them. And by the way, the reporter knew that this was real when he saw these texts, and then 2 hours later, he saw a report that the bombs actually dropped. Like, the idea that this shouldn't be classified is absurd. It should be classified, and you should not use it on signal. Is that simple enough for people to understand? Anyway, here's a...
Director Radcliffe, this was a huge mistake.
So this is John Ossoff, the senator from Georgia, going hard on, you'll see. Let me just play it again for everyone to hear. Because I know I started talking, but I want everyone to hear this.
Director Radcliffe, this was a huge mistake, correct?
No.
A national political...
Hold on.
No, you
Let me answer.
No,
Yeah,
answer.
this is the energy the Democrats need to have. Do not let them try to interject. You go hard on your point when you're trying to make it. I want to play this again to you, just for John Assad making this point. Watch him.
A national.
Yep.
Hold
Put
on.
your finger up.
Let me answer.
No,
The
Director
answer- the
Ratcliffe.
reason
I
I
asked
say
you a yes
no-
or no question.
Don't
Now you
hold
hold
on.
on. A national political reporter
You can characterize it how you want.
was made privy
The White
to
House has
sensitive
made clear
information about
that there
imminent
was an
military
inadvertent
operations against a
mistake,
foreign terrorist
An inadvertent
organization.
mistake of adding a reporter.
And that wasn't a huge
to a
mistake.
seal.
That wasn't
It
a
was.
huge mistake.
Well, I think they characterized
This is
it
an
as a
embarrassment.
mistake.
This is utterly unprofessional. There's been no apology. There has been no recognition of the gravity of this error. And by the way, we will get the full transcript of this chain, and your testimony will be measured carefully against its content. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. That's really bad, but you know what? I'm glad that there are some Democrats who are willing to go hard against them. I'm like Chuck Schumer. Man, that was really bad. Like, the idea that U.S. military strikes will be communicated on an open source app that we're not even sure who exactly can access it, because it's very possible foreign governments may have already hacked Signal. And if they've hacked Signal, they can see all the messages. And in addition to that, one of the people in this group chat was literally in Moscow when this happened. So just imagine he connects to like the Kremlin Wi-Fi, but the Kremlin Wi-Fi has some kind of virus in it that connects to people's phones. Like, so just imagine that Russia was able to hack. Let me just get this guy's name. I think it's Scott. No, sorry, Steve Witkoff was in Moscow. So just imagine that the Kremlin was able to hack Steve Witkoff's phone. They don't even need to hack Signal. They don't need to like bother with the encryption on Signal. As long as they can like get control of this guy's phone, they can read the messages on his phone. They can read it on his screen. It doesn't matter if Signal is encrypted. If the guy has his phone open, they can see it potentially. So potentially Russia has access to all of the information that was available in this group chat. I'm going to scroll up just to emphasize how much there is. Yeah. So that's what we're dealing with in this country. This is the level of incompetence that we are dealing with. And understand, this is a direct result of the kind of policies that Trump wants to implement. We're dealing with this because Trump values loyalty more than he values competence. He wants people who will just be blindly loyal to him, regardless of whether or not they don't know what the hell they're doing when it comes to these types of things. Okay? Actual government people before this may not have been 100% loyal to the president, but they sure knew how to take care of stuff like this. But these guys don't. And you know what? This is ultimately why dictatorships suck and why democracy is a good thing, because normal democracies don't appoint people like this to positions of power. That's only something that's unique to authoritarian governments. But here we are.